Y'all, nothing could have prepared the internet for what Claressa Shields just revealed. Strong, poised, untouchable, she dropped a bomb so heavy, it threatens to rewrite everything we thought we knew about her life, her relationships, and the people closest to her. This wasn't a rumor. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't a vague hint dropped in passing. This was Claressa, speaking with clarity, conviction, and raw emotion, claiming that Papoose allegedly forced her into a decision no one should ever have to make. And if that wasn't enough to shock the world, she added something even more sinister, something that crosses the line from manipulation into outright betrayal. According to her, he spiked her drink. The room she was in, the camera, the timing, it all mattered. Every pause, every subtle gesture, every measured word screamed danger, control, and calculated intention. The internet didn't just react, they froze. Clips were ripped. Screenshots circulated. TikTok edits went viral before the live even ended. And people weren't just asking, did this really happen? They were asking, how could someone do this? How long has this been hidden? Because this isn't just scandal. This isn't just gossip. This is betrayal unfolding in real time. And the fallout, it's about to hit harder than anyone imagined. Y'all, the story starts where the last one left off, but this time, the stakes are even higher. Claressa Shields, the champion, the icon, the woman who has always stood tall in the face of adversity, just revealed something that no one could have anticipated. Something so personal, so shocking, that the internet collectively paused for a moment and asked itself, is this really happening? The live footage began like any other. Claressa appeared calm, composed, almost unreadable. But there was a tension beneath her gaze that no camera could fully capture. She didn't shout. She didn't cry theatrically. She didn't over-explain. Every word, every pause, every measured breath was carefully placed, and it carried the weight of a story that had been silenced for far too long. And then she said it. Not hinted. Not suggested. She claimed that Papoose allegedly forced her to make a decision that no woman should ever face, an abortion that she didn't want, at a time and under circumstances she didn't fully control. The claim alone was enough to send the internet into chaos, but she didn't stop there. She alleged something far more disturbing, that he had spiked her drink to manipulate her, to ensure compliance, to take away her agency without anyone knowing. The camera captured her every expression. Her eyes, usually so fierce, were tired but unwavering. Her hands, resting lightly on the table, betrayed nothing, but the silence between her words screamed volumes. Those who were watching couldn't look away, because in that silence, the weight of what she was saying hung over the room like a storm cloud ready to break. As the revelation spread, social media exploded. Clips were ripped, reposted, and shared across TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Threads formed almost instantly, with viewers dissecting every word, every gesture, every pause. Did she really say that? Some asked. How could this have happened? Asked others. And for many, the story didn't feel like a celebrity scandal. It felt like a betrayal that anyone could relate to, magnified by the glare of public scrutiny. For Claressa, the emotional toll was obvious, even if she tried to maintain her composure. Those closest to her report that the pressure has been immense. Public appearances that once felt effortless now carry a weight of scrutiny that no champion should have to endure. Every comment, every post, every discussion online seems designed to dissect her pain rather than understand it. Yet, despite it all, she spoke. She revealed. She refused to let the story be controlled by anyone else. And the stakes aren't just personal, they are public. Papoose's response, as expected, was swift. Denials came quickly, broad and vague, carefully avoiding timelines, specifics, or direct engagement with the allegations. But in the absence of clarity, speculation ran rampant. When a claim is false, people attack it with facts. When it's dangerous, people fill the void with noise. And that's exactly what happened here. Meanwhile, the audience, both fans and casual viewers, began analyzing every past interaction. Interviews, social media posts, even offhand remarks from years ago were suddenly under a microscope. Patterns emerged. Certain actions, once thought innocent or strategic, were now being interpreted through a lens of manipulation and control. Every smile, every handshake, every public display of affection was questioned. Was Claressa ever truly in control? Was her narrative manufactured, or was it her own story, hijacked by someone else's agenda? The emotional core of this revelation cannot be overstated. Claressa Shields, who has fought in the ring and in life with strength, discipline, and courage, now faces a personal betrayal that cuts far deeper than any opponent ever could. The claim that someone she trusted could allegedly manipulate her body, her choices, and her agency is devastating, not just to her personally, but to the public perception of trust, love, and loyalty in relationships under the spotlight. And yet, even in the face of this chaos, she remains resolute. Her words aren't cries for sympathy, they are a warning. A statement. A claim that demands attention, not just from the media or the internet, but from anyone who believes that power and control can sometimes hide behind smiles and public performances. As viewers continued to watch, the story began to take on a life of its own. It wasn't just about Claressa and Papoose anymore. It became a story about manipulation, power, and control, about how personal decisions can be weaponized, about how public personas can mask private actions, and about how the very people who are supposed to protect us can sometimes be the ones undermining us. And through it all, Claressa Shields' message was clear. She will not be silenced. She will not allow this to be swept under the rug. And she will not let the narrative be controlled by anyone else. Because this revelation isn't just scandalous, it's consequential. And the fallout is only beginning. The moment Claressa Shields' revelation hit, the world didn't just react, it mutated. Clips circulated so fast, they were archived before the live even ended. Twitter threads exploded. TikTok edits were shared by the thousands. Instagram reels dissected every movement, every pause, every inflection in her voice. And through all of it, the audience wasn't just witnessing a scandal. They were witnessing a calculated unmasking, a betrayal so deep it challenged everything people thought they knew about Papoose, power, and control. People began revisiting old content. Past interviews, friendly exchanges, public appearances, even promotional clips were suddenly being scrutinized with a new lens. Was this always planned? One fan wrote. Was she ever in control? Another asked. Every smile, every handshake, every casual interaction now carried the shadow of manipulation. Social media feeds became a live investigation, as if the audience themselves were trying to reconstruct the truth from fragments of gestures and words. The claims were not just personal, they were structural. Claressa didn't just say she had been coerced. She described a system of influence that allegedly used her trust and public persona against her. Every act of love she thought was genuine suddenly seemed like part of a strategy, a calculated effort to ensure compliance, silence, and control. And the idea that a drink could be spiked, that her agency might have been stripped in private moments, sent shivers through anyone paying attention. It was intimate. It was terrifying. And it was real enough to make people question the world they thought they knew. Meanwhile, Papoose's response, or lack thereof, added fuel to the fire. His denials were quick, broad, and non-specific. There were no timelines, no evidence, no engagement with the key allegations. And in that vacuum, speculation didn't just grow, it exploded. Fans, journalists, and casual viewers alike began connecting dots, analyzing social media posts, cross-referencing interviews, even looking for patterns in relationships from years past. The lack of clarity, the vagueness, became almost as damning as the allegations themselves. Claressa, in the midst of this public storm, continued to show strength, though cracks were visible. People close to her say that she has had to navigate an impossible duality, maintaining composure in public while confronting trauma in private. Every post she made, every statement she released, was measured, precise, but every subtle gesture, every fleeting expression betrayed the weight of what she had endured. This wasn't just a story about betrayal. It was a story about resilience under pressure, about facing personal trauma while the world watches. And the internet noticed. While some users expressed outrage, others began forming theories about manipulation, control, and intent. Fans began revisiting old interviews, old posts, even casual comments, looking for signs they had missed. "Look at how she always smiles around him," one thread noted. "But her eyes tell the real story." Another suggested that patterns of behavior indicated repeated strategic positioning, something more than romance, something that resembled calculated management. The narrative began to pivot from celebrity drama to structural betrayal. It wasn't just Claressa's emotions that were exploited, it was her public image, her visibility, and the trust the audience had placed in what appeared to be genuine interactions. Every denial from Papoose was followed by another clip, another screenshot, another thread pointing out inconsistencies. The tension was mounting, not just online, but in every interaction Claressa had publicly. Fans also began speculating about the broader network around Papoose. How many people were aware? How much was orchestrated behind the scenes? Every action, from missed interviews to unexplained silences, became a potential piece of a puzzle no one could fully see yet. Social media became a courtroom, and everyone watching was both juror and detective. And in the midst of this, Claressa's story was gaining a life of its own. It wasn't just the shock factor anymore, it was a lesson in power dynamics, control, and manipulation. People began discussing not only the ethics of personal relationships, but also the vulnerability of public figures under the constant gaze of social media. It wasn't enough to feel empathy for her experience. Audiences were trying to decode the system that allowed such alleged manipulation to occur, and that system seemed to extend far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Yet despite the chaos, Claressa remained resolute. Every statement, every social media post, every public appearance reinforced a single truth. She would not allow the narrative to be controlled by anyone else. She refused to let the story be buried under vague denials, edited clips, or selective attention. And as the world tried to catch up, the story escalated further. Because here's the thing, once something like this breaks publicly, it can't be unseen. Patterns emerge. Motives are questioned. Timing is analyzed. And when the alleged manipulation involves power, influence, and trust, the stakes aren't just emotional, they are structural. Claressa's claim isn't just personal trauma, it's a revelation about control, exploitation, and the fragility of trust under public scrutiny. And now, as the first wave of shock begins to settle, one question dominates every conversation online. If this is true, how deep does it go? By now, the internet wasn't just reacting. It was actively participating in Claressa Shield's story. Every clip shared, every comment posted, every thread started became part of a collective investigation. And what made this different from any other scandal was how personal it felt. This wasn't just a celebrity story. It was about trust, power, and control, unfolding in real time before millions of eyes. Claressa's words, precise yet raw, had shifted the narrative entirely. The claim that Papoose allegedly forced her to get an abortion and spiked her drink wasn't just shocking, it reframed everything that came before. Every smile, every handshake, every moment of public affection was suddenly under a microscope. Fans were reinterpreting years of content, replaying interviews, scanning social media posts, looking for patterns they hadn't noticed. And in that chaos, one uncomfortable realization began to emerge. This wasn't just personal betrayal. This was calculated manipulation, executed over time, carefully designed to maintain control while keeping the public in the dark. Social media began dissecting not just Claressa's experience, but Papoose's actions and the responses, or lack thereof, of those around him. Vague denials, delayed statements, and strategic silences were scrutinized. Why weren't timelines clarified? Why weren't specifics addressed? Every unanswered question became a thread, a conversation, a piece of evidence in the court of public opinion. And the more people analyzed, the more patterns emerged, patterns that suggested deliberate orchestration rather than accident. Meanwhile, Claressa's composure under pressure was remarkable. Closed sources reported that while her public persona remained controlled, the weight of her revelations was heavy. Every appearance, every social media post, every comment she made was now under the lens of millions. Yet she maintained her voice, refusing to allow the story to be hijacked, reframed, or silenced. In every word, every pause, there was clarity, resilience, and purpose. She wasn't seeking sympathy. She was asserting truth, demanding accountability, and exposing a system of power that had been concealed behind performance and public appearances. And the reactions weren't limited to fans. Media outlets began to dissect the story, asking questions about power, control, and the ethical responsibility of public figures. Experts in manipulation, coercion, and influence weighed in. Every detail Claressa revealed, from the alleged drink spiking to the coercion surrounding her personal decision, was examined not just as scandal, but as a case study in exploitation. And every interpretation only added weight to the narrative. The story had grown beyond gossip. It had become a societal conversation about trust, influence, and control. The psychological toll of such public exposure cannot be overstated. Claressa's strength had always been visible in her career, but now it was tested in a deeply personal arena. Reports from sources close to her suggest she felt isolated, watching as her private trauma became public spectacle, while those who allegedly orchestrated it remained largely insulated from accountability. Every denial, every carefully worded statement, every attempt to deflect scrutiny highlighted the imbalance, and it fueled further speculation. What made this story so gripping was the layered nature of the alleged manipulation. It wasn't a single incident. According to Claressa, it was a pattern, a series of orchestrated actions designed to undermine her autonomy while maintaining an illusion of normalcy. The drink, the coercion, the carefully curated public interactions, they all fit into a structure meant to control perception, reputation, and agency. And the internet, ever vigilant, began piecing together the puzzle, framing what might have been hidden behind smiles, interviews, and social media appearances. Meanwhile, discussions turned toward power dynamics. How does someone exploit trust while remaining publicly untouchable? How can influence be weaponized subtly, invisibly, and strategically? And most importantly, how can someone navigate exposure when the narrative isn't theirs to control? Claressa's story wasn't just a revelation about one relationship. It was a lesson in how public figures, especially women, can be manipulated in ways that leave little visible trace yet have profound consequences. The story escalated further as fans began speculating about other alleged patterns. Could this be a repeated strategy? Were there other situations where influence and control overshadowed trust? Every social media post, every vague denial, every past interaction was scrutinized. Threads multiplied, comments spread, and a global conversation about power, betrayal, and accountability took root. And through it all, Claressa's narrative stayed central, not just because of the shock, but because of the clarity, precision, and courage in her words. By the end of this segment, it was clear, the stakes were no longer just personal. This story was about visibility, accountability, and systemic manipulation. The internet wasn't merely watching, it was analyzing, judging, and debating. And Claressa Shields' courage in revealing such a deeply personal betrayal had turned a private trauma into a public conversation about trust, power, and control. Because here's the truth. Once manipulation and coercion are exposed, they cannot be unseen. Patterns become visible, structures are questioned, and every prior assumption is appended. And as the audience waited for the next chapter, one question dominated every discussion online. If this is true, how deep does it really go, and who else might be involved? As this story continues to unfold, one thing is clear. The narrative is no longer just about Claressa Shields or Papoose. It's about control, trust, and the fragility of power in relationships that unfold under the public eye. And the shocking part, we've only seen the surface. The deeper questions remain unanswered, the hidden patterns remain partially obscured, and the consequences of these revelations are still rippling outward. Now it's up to you, the audience, to process, react, and engage. Watch closely. Analyze every statement, every clip, every post. Don't let the noise distract you from the truth, because in moments like this, silence and vagueness often tell more than words ever could. Ask yourself, who benefits? Who holds the power? And how many layers of manipulation might still be hidden? If Claressa's claims are true, then the implications reach far beyond a single incident. They reveal a world where control is subtle, influence is weaponized, and public perception is carefully curated to obscure reality. And if they aren't, then the conversation itself becomes a lesson in scrutiny, critical thinking, and the importance of questioning narratives rather than blindly accepting them. So as this saga continues, don't just scroll past. Don't just consume. Engage. Discuss. Share responsibly. Protect the truth. Because the story isn't finished, and the fallout is far from over. And most importantly, remember this: behind every public persona is a real person, with real agency and real vulnerability. Claressa Shields' story isn't just entertainment, it's a wake-up call. Watch carefully, listen closely, and stay tuned, because the next chapter could change everything we thought we knew about power, trust, and betrayal.